Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with this. Let me present this thing here. Good afternoon, those of you who are tuning in. My name is Matt Goins. I'll introduce myself a little more fully in a second here, but this is our second brown bag for the strategic user-centered website design sort of initiative that we're kicking off here. The goal is to provide training to help you create measurable, usable, and accessible campus websites. We will get into that a little bit more in a second here. The purpose of this series is to provide, as I said, a series of informational courses and sessions to increase, expand, and reinforce the idea of user-centered web design practices. This is a collaborative effort between the WiscWeb service, which I exist out of, and then the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience, which I will introduce those individuals as we go throughout this process. A little bit about what we're going to talk about this afternoon, who we are. Again, just to kind of introduce who the individuals that you're going to hear from throughout these training sessions, and then the services that we work out of, and then the services that we provide as part of those services. And sort of segueing into that next bullet point, what can we offer to help you? This is kind of a highlight of what we plan to train people on over the next several months, which is setting goals for your website, thinking about a user-centered web design, talking more about web accessibility and how it improves the experience for all, and then talking about why it's important to track and measure your website. So those things kind of are cyclical ideas that we want to make sure that we touch on as we go throughout this process. And then lastly, we'll, at the very end, we'll talk about all the various trainings that will be available moving forward. So, as I said, I'm Matt Goins. I work with campus engagement and training out of the WiscWeb service. For those of you who are not familiar with what WiscWeb is, we are a campus-funded service that provides training, hosting, and support for UW-Madison departments, labs, and programs. We use the UW theme within WordPress, and with that, we have a limited number of plugins, various customization options available at additional costs. And then with that, we do offer introductory training sessions, as well as open lab sessions that are essentially drop-in sessions for any users of WiscWeb or the UW theme. And we use those to provide just additional opportunities for training and support. Then you can see what our website is there at the very bottom, the wiscweb.wisc.edu. Phyllis isn't here, but I'll just introduce her briefly, and then I'll let Jessica go. Phyllis Trieg is the Assistant Director for the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience here at UW-Madison. She was here on Wednesday to speak about the service, but in her stead is Jess Jones, so I will yield the floor to Jess.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess. I'm team lead in the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience at UW-Madison. I also do user research, user experience design, content strategy, etc. I've been with DoIT since 2013, and I and my colleagues in the center work across campus to bring user-centered methods to websites, services, and apps for a variety of groups, including advising, business services, and the Center for First Year Experience, among many others. Just to give you an introduction to the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience, this is a new center that began in 2018. Our goal is to work with partners across the university to design a more accessible, usable digital campus. We do that by helping our partners understand their users' needs and take informed action on the needs that you discover from your users. So in doing so, we want to provide people with skills. So we offer training in user-centered techniques for people who are designing websites like in WiscWeb, but also services and apps across campus. We provide you with guidance and tools that you can use to execute those designs and improve your digital services and experiences. And then if you have a deeper need for user-centered methods, we provide consultation on specific projects as well. So you can contact me at the email address on the slide, jessica.jones@wisc.edu, with any questions. And we're really excited to be partnering with WiscWeb on this training series. We think it's a great first step in reaching out to campus with training in user-centered methods.
I guess something we didn't talk about, I'm going to go off script. I guess talk a little bit about, I guess, the evolution of the center, and then I guess examples of work that you guys have done, not necessarily that we can show, but like talk a little bit about the conversations that you've had. Adam Hillsmeyer is also here, and I'll introduce him. He'll have a more further introduction in a second here, but he's also here, so you'll hear his voice. But I guess essentially just kind of talk a little bit more about, you know, the evolution of the center, some of the things that you have done with users, just to kind of give some examples of what people could think about potentially.
Sure. So the center spun out of a user experience design group that we have within Do It that has existed since, I believe, 2012, and has always been led by Phyllis Trigg. The center was kind of spun up via a partnership with the McBurney office, the ADA folks here on campus. Really in an effort to increase the digital accessibility of our sites and websites and apps here on campus. But accessibility and usability go hand in hand. So we're focused on improving the overall experience for everyone, which is really a tenet of accessibility and what we call universal design. And we found that there are a lot of people here on campus who have an appetite to understand user-centered methods, which is awesome. We're really excited to be working with people. So we're taking the approach of providing training specifically for that reason. We have in the past worked on very specific projects, including we're redesigning the bursar's office website currently. We worked closely with the Office of Undergraduate Advising on the Advising Gateway. In terms of accessibility projects, we've worked across campus with many partners. Our accessibility specialist, Sandy, who's also on the call, can speak to many of those. Adam, do you want to talk to something you've done?
Yeah, you could also actually find a live version, law.wisc.edu. The law school is currently up, just recently updated their website with guidance from us. Financialaid.wisc.edu is also in the process right now. Those are two pretty good examples of user-centered design. I think Jess gave a great summary of like where we came from, and I would just also just add to that that this is a trend in higher education right now. As many campuses are looking to how to improve their digital campus, and user-centered design is the current methodology of what people are looking at, and really making sure that that experience you have on campus is up to par with what people expect to have. We actually use in many training materials some studies that talk about what users expect from their digital campus, a la the websites and the digital interactions that they might have. And there is a great expectation that these things should be working. And if they are not working, we see in reports back to us that there is less interest in those types of campus. So the impact is potentially great. Not to say that we're saving the world here or anything, but we are certainly trying to get Madison on par with what the expectations are out there.
Sandy, I hear that you're also there. Anything you want to add to that conversation?
So in of getting Madison on par with expectations of the industry standards around user-centered design, there's also the expectation of inclusivity, not work.
Uh-oh. Sandy, you're bouncing in and out of audio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's not just about having your physical space and your culture and your community being inclusive and being framed and rooted in diversity, but we also want to bring those same things into our digital spaces and our content, but also the way that we program our content. So through this training, through our trainings, we will be teaching people how to use software and how to program for inclusivity.
And a lot of this is, it is a long time effort of our two groups trying to get together to provide this. I mean, the center's aspect of this is they are the subject matter experts. They are the ones that I yield to, from my standpoint, for all of the various pieces of information. From WiscWeb standpoint, we have, as Jess was alluding to, we have a large user base that is hungry for information and hungry for knowledge and hungry for more. And these are those next steps into providing sort of that need and meeting those needs. So that's a little bit about, what we're trying to do with this whole effort here. So that being said, I will again yield to Adam so that he can kind of introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he's going to be moving into.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, my name is Adam Hilsmeyer. I'm a content strategist with the aforementioned center. That is my focus area. Content strategy is sometimes unfamiliar to folks. It is really the process of organizing and determining what content, how to present it, and deliver it to the right audience at the right time. I will also mention that I'm Google Analytics certified, as some of the training that we'll be presenting will be talking about Google Analytics. But let's start with the first training that we'll be offering up even in the next week here that's coming up. It's called Developing and Measuring Goals. I feel like this is a foundation, some of the foundational questions that need to be established when you have a website and you want to make improvements or you want to make sure it is meeting the expectations that you hope it is. We need to develop and measure goals. In this class, our training session, we'll be using a tool that was developed by Google called the HEART framework, and we'll essentially be walking through people the steps in how to create a specific mission tied in goal. So tied into the department, division, colleges, whatever you represent, a goal that is tied into your mission to make sure the website has not only serving the purpose that you want, but we also have specific and measurable and actionable goals that we would tie into your website. And what you can do is take that and you can start, once you have goals that are tied into your mission, you can start determining whether or not your website is meeting those goals that you have set forth. And there's a process that we'll work through in this class to talk about that. I would just mention the actionable part of this because we want to make sure that goals are actionable, that you have. A question you might ask yourself is, if we knew something that we were measuring, would we change anything based on that? And we'll try to set forth in this training session to answer some of those questions. I would note that this is a free class. It is scheduled for 2 hours. 60 minutes of it will be working through this exercise and explaining kind of what we're doing. And then we'll also have another 60 minutes on the tail end just to talk and answer questions and do some more one-on-one. The next class we'll be talking about is something we teased out last year, and we saw there was a demand for it, and that's just like some basic understandings of Google Analytics. This, I think you would consider an entry-level course, the basics of Google Analytics. Again, we're talking about goals here a little bit, not as deep as the HEART framework class, but we certainly will talk about that. We'll talk about what Google Analytics is, why you might want to use it, how it works, determine some of the analytics that might be beneficial for you to look at. We'll look at some other examples of how other folks on the UW-Madison campus are using Google Analytics, and then we'll also do a pretty basic walkthrough of the dashboard, how to look at reports, and how to look at some of the information that you might be interested in learning. And I believe the sign up for that course is forthcoming.
It is, yep, and I'll show that in a little bit here after we talk a little bit through all the courses there. I'll show where you can go to actually find that stuff, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the communications. But now we'll have Sandy talk again, specifically to the area that she is going to be training on. So Sandy, go ahead.
Hi, so I am, I have gone through usability schooling, similar to all the designers in the center. And while I was in that process, I sort of got foisted into accessibility on the job when I was doing design work, and got very, very interested very quick. And then I went ahead and got a graduate certificate in to pair with my usability master's, specifically in accessibility. And if anyone's ever interested in credentials around accessibility, I do really recommend the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, or now they're going by Urbana-Champaign, their graduate certificate in information accessibility development and policy. So anyways, the next course that we're going to see in our training is around creating accessible content. And the heart of that really is the notion that accessibility isn't exclusively for folks with disabilities or for folks who personally identify as having disabilities. The idea is that accessibility is for everyone and that we all benefit from it, and that we want to support social inclusion and support users with disabilities and folks who identify as having disabilities, but we all have needs and we all have challenges. So people benefiting from accessibility come in many, many forms, from what feels like convenience to what feels like major access barriers. Eliminating those things, making things easier and more convenient each minute of each day is really important, because each of those things really aggregate into affecting people's lives. So we want to teach you how to ask yourself some key questions that help to improve the user experience for everyone. So these next key questions, can you go to the next
Yep. Sorry.
It's okay. So asking yourself, is your content accessible to all audiences, really bakes down to not making your content specific to any particular sensory need or modality. And so in our courses, we'll talk about what are the different sensory capabilities that people have, and how might you design text-based data and turn everything, all your visual content, into content that also is supplemented by text alternatives, so that all people can reach that information in the way that they want to reach it through their devices, whether they be considered assistive devices or they are mobile devices. If we design our data and design our content for accessibility, then it can be consumed in any way that people need it at any time. So we want to know how we would even know through testing if something was accessible, and then what to do about it. And in addition to that, we want to know how to bake our accessibility into our content creation from the beginning, so that we're not creating content and always in this loop of then testing it, realizing something's wrong, and having to walk it back or go back and retrofit an accessible option. So that's what we'll cover, and I'm super excited to do it.
I will say that we've had a nice collaboration with Sandy over the past several months with the WiscWeb service, and she has been available from time to time for our open labs to meet with people and kind of give that initial conversation about the importance of accessibility, and then specifically how to test it, and when you test it, what to be looking for. So one of the outcomes of this whole process is to hopefully increase that, as it says in there, that visibility of creating accessibility and accessible and usable content within your site, and knowing how to look for that type of stuff. So we're eager to really increase the knowledge across campus when it comes to accessibility. So those are the first 3 classes. Those are basically your introductions into this whole process. That's what we have planned. Jonathan's not available to talk about what he's going to do, but Jonathan Dietering is one of the front-end web developers with Do It, and he's one of the developers that I work with pretty closely when it comes to WiscWeb services. But there is Jonathan's various credentials there. A couple of things to note with him is that he is Google Analytics certified, and he is one of our, if we can call him that, resident experts when it comes to Google Analytics questions. He has a wealth of knowledge and sort of use cases that he uses whenever we are having conversations with groups about analytics. So what Jonathan is going to be doing, and as Adam had said earlier, the basics of Google Analytics was kind of what we kicked off with a year ago with a few classes. It was a coordinated training between Adam in the first half of the class and Jonathan in the second half of the class. And Adam's part of it was basically what was in that first slide that we saw earlier on, which is, you know, the basics of Google Analytics. What is it? Why should you use it? How do you set it up? What should you be looking for? And what should you be measuring? So Jonathan's aspect of that was a much deeper dive into Google Analytics, and essentially what it says on this slide, learning how to use Google Analytics to pull even more actionable data and begin making data-driven decisions regarding your site, identify poorly performing pages, track the success of things like email campaigns, analyze data that represents unique market segments, using that data to compare it against other metrics and time periods, and then also, you know, creating general reports and how to share that data with other colleagues and others who may be interested in a lot of this information that you're looking for. So where the first class is just basically we're opening the door and we're trying to get you to understand just in general what analytics is and what you should be looking for with it. The second course will be much deeper and much more for those who are getting more comfortable with using analytics and using some of these particular items that Jonathan is going to hit on. So we really want to make sure that we offer a more advanced look at it, because there's a lot of questions about, like, okay, I can see my data, now what? Now we need to start taking that data and making some more significant decisions or more significant views to take a look at that. So that's what Jonathan will talk about. So the what's next aspect of this. So essentially, as Adam said, these trainings are going to be 2-hour sessions. The first half of that, the first 60 minutes or so, is basically going to be the time for instruction. And then we'll leave the second half for those who are in attendance to be more like an open lab environment. So, you know, it's a bring your own device idea. You can hang out. You can ask questions, or I always encourage people, if you don't have any questions or you don't know what questions you need to ask, I still think it's nice to hang out and listen to what other people ask, because you may have a similar question and you just didn't know how to ask it or where to even look to begin thinking about asking it. So I always encourage people to kind of just hang out and listen, because even if you might not have a question, it's still a good learning opportunity from others who may have similar questions. I talked about the fact that the WiscWeb service itself offers open labs, and I'll show where all that stuff is within our site in a little bit here. But another outcome of this is that we hope to create a few more targeted open lab sessions to give the center a little more opportunity to sort of have these initial one-on-one conversations with people, to, again, ask questions, get a little bit of feedback. Not so much full-blown consultation, but rather, hey, I have this question about my menu structure. What do you think? Take a quick look at it. A lot of times we can tell you, you might want to look at simplifying. You might want to take a look at moving some things around. Sometimes it might require a little more consultation. So that's a little bit what these targeted open labs are for, is just basically to introduce you, ask a couple questions, and see what further needs might be. And for us, we want to use it as a gauge of what other trainings might we want to offer, because these questions keep coming in on a regular basis. Thirdly, we want to create a central campus resource for all this stuff. Right now, that central campus resource is going to be the WiscWeb site, but that's not to say it's not going to change in the future as this collaboration continues to grow and we continue to try and figure more out where we land together, as opposed to just two separate services. So right now, WiscWeb will be the central resource, but that's just the starting point. That may change in the future. And then, as I say at the end there, all information, including the recordings of these sessions, regardless of where the central resource may end up being, we'll always offer this stuff through the WiscWeb website as well. So really quick, I want to bounce out to the WiscWeb site. Let me get out of here real quick. Just to kind of show you where it is. So WiscWeb, again, the URL is just wiscweb.wisc.edu. This is our main page. Again, there's a lot of information that we have out there. If you're interested in getting a website with us, you can request a website there. A number of things to go on, but specifically down at the bottom on the left side, this is where our news section is. We'll post things there. Specifically, I'll be posting these recordings from Wednesday and today in this area right here. Over here on the right side, this is where our events are. So this is where you can see when our general open labs are. The February 21st event is right here, the how to develop and measure your website goals. This is the next training session that will be available. You can see the registration link right there, go.wisc.edu/1sjh80. So if you're interested, you can go out there and register for that today. It is limited seating. The limited means there's a limit of 60, so there's lots of room, but it is available and out there today. Lastly, underneath training, and specifically down at the bottom, underneath the open lab, this is where you can go to just view our upcoming open labs. And again, the WiscWeb team, we support the UW theme. We support our customers, obviously, so we can try and help you as best we can with any questions you have regarding the theme, general use of WordPress and the UW theme. We'll try and help you as best we can, but just be aware that we are there for you if you need more help. Back over to you. Okay. So what's next? Again, we've talked about this a little bit, but just to show you what the upcoming schedule is looking like. Again, next Thursday, February 21st, from 1 to 3 p.m., that is when we are hosting the developing and measuring goals for your website training. There is the link to the sign up right there as well. So you can see it there. You'll also see it at the site. On Friday, March 8th, that will be the basics of Google Analytics course. And again, I need to create the registration for that one to get that out there for folks. And then Thursday, March 21st, that will be Sandy's course, which is the accessible content creation. So that one, again, needs to be created, and we will communicate these out. I don't have Jonathan's scheduled out there yet, mainly because I need to make sure that I can get it into his schedule for availability, and then making sure the room is also available as well. These sessions in person will be held down at Memorial Library in room 126. It's a nice big stadium seating room. We've used it for some past trainings. We really like the way that it's laid out. It is definitely bring your own device, so if you have a laptop and you want to bring it along to follow along, please feel free. The registrations will be communicated soon. We were talking about that a little bit before the session started. We have different ways to communicate out how to register for these sites. But again, as always, this stuff will be posted at the WiscWeb site. And these will also be streamed. So if you can't come in person, or if you'd rather just sit in your office and watch this training, at least the first half, we won't stream the open part of it. But again, you can just take a look at that stuff there. I don't know, any parting shots?
No, we're excited to work with everyone.
Yeah, looking forward to helping folks out.
Sandy, anything from you?
No, that sounds great.
All right, well, thank you everyone who tuned in. We look forward to working with you in the future, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.